Everyone, and welcome to the Pan EU India Summit. And I'm Ritambra, and I've been your host for quite some time now. And I am joined here with my team, Snehal and Anubhav. And I have two very beautiful people with me. One is Monica Gill, who has been standing up, but she's a celebrity of Miss India, and she has been standing up for the farmers' right and human rights violations in India. She has been a very vocal support. And I also have Rakib Hamid Nayak with me, who is a journalist and has been writing about really difficult issues in India. And this particular session, which is a fireside conversation, is designed for Rakib and Monica to converse with each other on the idea of India and the role of celebrities in upholding the human rights values in our social spaces. So welcome both of you. And the floor is yours, Rakib.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you, Monica, for joining in today. I'll straight away jump into my first question. I mean, because time is short and I think the topic is really important. And I think this hasn't been discussed that much, especially the role of Bollywood in standing up for people. So, I mean, why did it take one Rihanna from Hollywood to rake up the farmer protests internationally? Why not Priyanka Chopra or Shah Rukh Khan from the Bollywood?
I believe that what we are lacking in India right now is the freedom of expression and freedom of speech. The biggest problem I see that happens with any type of right-wing party or a right-wing regime is that the first thing to go is any type of criticism or any type of dissent. If the freedom had existed where people did not feel threatened to do so, I firmly believe they would have. I did not see during this time, during the farmers' protest, people genuinely tweeting out against the farmers. The tweets that I did see were paid promotions, which you can notice between, they were word for word the same within a lot of the actors. Furthermore, I think the Rihanna tweet did bring it to a global perspective. But I do wish that more of our Bollywood celebrities had spoken out, simply because it's people that make the celebrity. It's not the government. The government does not go and watch the films. The government does not go and make the money. The government does not, just throw out love at them. It's the people. So when we talk about human rights and, celebrities speaking up, yes, celebrities have a huge responsibility. They have it to the people that made them who they are. So yeah, I think Rihanna is someone who takes that responsibility very seriously, and I'm very glad she does. And I'm taking a leaf out of her book and also taking my responsibility to my people very seriously.
Okay. And during the same protests, we saw two sides. One was Punjabi film industry backing up the protests, while most of the Bollywood stars and actors chose to either stay silent or take the entire farmer stand. We saw a couple of actors doing that, Kangana Ranaut and others. So do you think, is it the fear of the government that they don't stand up with the people, or is it just that the moral compass is missing?
Somewhere I want to say it's both. All of these celebrities tweeted during George Floyd's death and the aftermath. All of these celebrities tweeted hashtag BLM, hashtag Black Lives Matter. So I'm wondering whether they like to follow trends because, the BLM movement is so popular. But somewhere I do believe that a moral compass is missing, because even during the CAA protests, we didn't see a lot of celebrities speaking out during that time either, And I don't know if it's the fear of the government, which I personally think it is, because we do have an extreme right-wing government right now that does persecute people who speak out against them. But I think with what we see with a lot of the Punjabi celebrities who are supporting this is that a lot of us are descendants of farmers, right? I've seen my grandfather and my grandmother toil the fields. If I hadn't grown up in that atmosphere where, I was constantly in the field, maybe my passion for this would have been different, right? And I think that's what you see in a lot of Punjabi artists who are supporting. They too have farms. They too are farmers. So when something hits you personally, you're more likely to be vocal about it. And I think that's the perspective I come from, that this is affecting me, my family, my legacy, my history as well. My grandfather's probably screaming his heart out in his grave right now because he's so upset. With a lot of Bollywood celebrities, maybe, farming is not in their blood, if I had to give them the benefit of the doubt. But to answer your question, it's a little bit of both. Moral compass is missing, and people tend to value their career more than the lives of people. And I do think there's a fear of this government. This government is an extreme right-wing party.
Okay, that's true, and I would like to add on what you said, because we usually see these celebrities saying that, okay, we don't comment on political issues. For example, if there is for example, farmers' protests or the CAA, they see it as it has a political issue. But overall, this is how I see things, because when Muslims are being demonized, Sikh protests are being criminalized, and Dalits and other minorities are being demonized. I mean, I don't believe, it is a political issue, because it becomes more of a moral issue then, right? Because at the end of the day, calling out injustice is not political. Okay.
Yes.
Like, for example, during the CAA protests, we saw Muslims coming out on the street. It was not a politically motivated movement. It was wholly because a whole community was vilified, was kept out of law. And actually, this was just a total question on the existence, and the same goes on with the farmers. But what celebrities do is they just mix up these two things, the moral one and the political one. And they try to give it a political color and say that it is out of our domain because this is a political issue. Because, that is one of the factors, where I think celebrities should draw a line and start thinking that justice is a moral issue. It's not political. So, moving on. Yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to follow up with that because when Rihanna tweeted, and we had all these tweets about, this is in India's internal matter. So let's talk about this. The COVID crisis is in India's internal matter. That's upon a government, right? And how a government handles it. Yes, we're helping because, for humanity's sake. But when human rights are violated, human rights, that is a humanity issue. All of humanity. That's every human across the globe needs to be concerned. With our Bollywood celebrities, all I'm going to say is silence is a privilege. They're coming from a position of privilege. That is why they don't speak. Being apolitical is a privilege because you know that the laws which are being formed to benefit you. Being apolitical in a country, whether you're in America, in India, in Canada, that's a position of privilege. I cannot be apolitical because I am from a minority community, both in the USA and in India. So I think we really have to establish that all these guys, it's privilege. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. And adding to what you said, because it's coming back to back now, and it's good that we're having this conversation this way. The role of Bollywood in making this government so popular, making this ideology, the ideology of Hindutva popular in India, is also something we should ponder over, because Bollywood has always played a role of a yes man, because they have always been with those who are in power. Before BJP, it was Congress. Now it's of course, this right-wing government in India. So why is it important for stars and celebrities to use their platform for good and for people? Why is it like, we should expect that from celebrities and not do the other?
So here's the first thing that we have to establish, which I don't think a lot of people understand. A government does not equal the nation. You can dissent against the government and still be patriotic. I think with Indian celebrities and the Indian junta in general, they can't make the distinction. They think that dissenting or speaking out against the government is, speaking out against the nation, or somehow like being anti-national. That's one. Two, I really don't believe that Indian celebrities are very like woke about what they're doing. Like, I don't see any type of realization or some sort of understanding of what's happening and why they should speak up. I think most people just want to get the next film and call it a day. But I do agree with you that this government, I mean, these people have had a huge role in making this government popular and allowing the atrocities that have happened. If it wasn't for these celebrities taking pictures with the prime minister and pushing him forward, I do think more people and more citizens would have been able to dissent freely. They kind of put a okay stamp of approval on it, like, we approve this. That's what they did. Okay, if you don't want to dissent, you don't want to speak out, fine, but then back away quietly. You don't need to be going to events, clicking pictures, posting them on your Instagram page. But they all did that.
Yeah,
They approved of what he was doing.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah. And sometimes I mean, last year during the BLM protests, Black Lives Matter protests in the US, I'm the fan of Halsey and the singer. So I used to look at her Instagram, and she used to participate in the protest, like, not as a protester, but like, help those people who used to get injured during the protests, like, this Black Lives Movement matter. At the same time, I used to think, what if this Bollywood star one day will, like, get off their fancy apartments in Mumbai and get down to the street in Delhi, in Shaheen Bagh, and be with the protesters and tell them, hey, people, we are with you. This is like, you made us and we are here with you because an injustice has been done to you. I mean, of course, that's pretty not obvious. And that's not going to happen. So, Anup, you want to go ahead and ask a question? We can't hear you. Muted.
Sorry.
I can't hear you. You're muted again.
Right. Okay. I hope it works now. Yeah. Sorry. So hello. I have a question which is related to the same topic that we're talking. And Karan Thapar, the famous journalist, Indian journalist, was recently asked the same question. And the question was, why the Indian stars, Bollywood stars, from the film industry do not speak enough vocally on issues that matter, And his reply was very interesting. He said, but the stars they're not supposed to talk on each and every topic, economy or political science or medical issues are not their expertise. So this expectation that Bollywood stars or Hollywood stars should talk on certain issues, because we have also seen stars in India giving some Virat Kohli, Kangana Ranaut and others, Akshay Kumar, giving certificates and their views which were not really consistent with the reality, So when on one side we talk about freedom of expression, can we force people, for example, to give their opinions? Is it fair, an expectation?
So what we're saying, we're not talking about forcing. We're talking about standing up for what's right. There's it's very different from saying like, get your appendix removed or get a COVID vaccine. Those are two very different topics, right? A pros and cons of an appendix can be argued, and it's for a doctor to decide. Get your COVID vaccine is a humanity issue. get your COVID vaccine because we are going through an apocalypse. And if you don't, you're most likely going to die. Like those are two very different topics. One helps the country move forward. The other one is benign and like doesn't have anything to say. Cancer treatments, benign. Not everybody is affected with cancer. When it comes to climate change, you can argue, is climate change affecting everyone? I believe yes, but if someone doesn't want to believe that, more power to them. Trump didn't believe climate change existed, but he's also an idiot. I don't know, like, I'm not saying everybody needs to speak on everything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, but if there's a wrong happening in front of you, don't endorse it, you know? And we as celebrities, we forget that a simple post is an endorsement. You know, like clicking a picture with someone and posting it, it's like, oh, I have a lot of respect for Monica and what she does. And she clicked a picture with this person and posted, so this person must be a decent human. That's what I'm talking about. Secondly, issues that plague, you know, your community or the people that have made you. So if for instance, I worked in majority Punjabi films, right? And the Punjabi people made me who I am. And if there's an issue plaguing the Punjabi community, but I'm saying this is not my expertise, I better educate myself and make it my expertise. Because if the Punjabi people in the Punjabi language and the Punjabi culture don't exist, my platform doesn't exist. You know, my career doesn't exist. A lot of who I am and what I am does not exist. But here's the other thing. We get into this debate about minority and majority. A member of a minority community or someone who has, you know, kind of catapulted themselves from within a minority community has to worry about that. Someone from a majority community may not have to be as concerned. Again, that's a position of privilege. So I think when you are a celebrity or when you have a large platform, you have a lot of responsibility that goes with it. And staying silent is a privilege, like, period.
So, I mean, Monica, looking at your answers, I know I've been following your work very closely over the past few weeks. Yeah, before that, of course, but like, you know, it was pretty vague, not that closely, but now I'm following it very closely. What is it that motivates you to be the voice of the people? Like, you know, to speak up for the people, to speak up on issues that matters to the people, not just your community, but other communities as well.
Okay, so this kind of dive into activism has been very recent. It started in November. Before that, I was very like vocal on Trump and BLM. Black Lives Matter because my father, my brother, and my fiance are both men of color, right? And I'm very against the them versus us thought process, whereas, oh, it's happening to them, but it won't happen to us. And that's one thing we all have to kind of throw out. If it can happen to them, 100% it can happen to you. So that's why I was vocal during BLM. Although at that time, I didn't go to any protests. I wouldn't call myself an activist. With the farmers' protest, that it's personal. It's very personal because I grew up in an atmosphere where farming was the be all end all, right? In Rajasthan, when I was growing up, we weren't allowed to buy food off of trolleys. Like my grandmother just didn't allow it. It was whatever's grown in our kids, like that's what you eat. And if you want something and we haven't grown it from home, like you're not eating it. And like whenever my grandfather used to take us into town to get like pakode and gulab jamun, like our grandma used to be pissed, right down to like halwa and kheer and everything. It was made from stuff at home. And she was very like, to this day, she'll grow her food herself and, you know, freeze it or whatever. But if it's not grown in front of her, she will not eat it. And it's that kind of love and toiling and watching them shoulder to shoulder, you know, work and, you know, and grow out of that, I think, which hit me a lot during the farmers' protest. But the biggest thing that I always talk about was that when the farmers were moving from Punjab through Haryana, the atrocities that they were facing and my grandmother's reaction to them. My grandmother is someone who, you know, she's from Pakistan. So in 47, she was on a gadda, and, you know, she traveled from Pakistan, Punjab into, you know, India, Punjab. Then, you know, two pandemics she's seen, and then, you know, the Sikh genocide and the bombing of the Golden Temple in 1984. So the kind of traumas that I saw resurfacing within her really shook me up and led to an understanding that our community has gone through a lot, and there's a lot of underlying traumas that have passed down generation to generation. And I'm sure within the Muslim community in India, it's the same, right? Traumas are passed down through generations because they're taught. And the only way to stop that generational trauma is to change behavior, right? It's to show my grandmother that times have changed, that our community is no longer powerless, that we have a voice. If we're not okay with something, we will create change, and we are not going to go through the same things that we have in the past. And that was my basic goal. It was basically to show my 88-year-old grandmother before she dies that your grandchildren are in a better world than, you know, you saw. And that's even now, like, that's my basic goal. Like, it's like what I do is not for the world. It's for the people I love. You know, if it benefits the world, great. You know, that's God's blessing. I'm great at it benefits the world. But most importantly, it's for the people I love. So the people I love have a more comfortable, you know, better existence. And we as a society don't address traumas, right? And I think that's really sad, because unless we start addressing mental health, like, our community is going to be very, very, very shaky. Even if you look at the farmers' protest, majority of who's there, it's all elderly people. They refuse to leave. And it's that the Punjabi word for it is hind. It's not, which isn't stubbornness. It's a word that sort of translates into resilience, but it's a kind of aggressive resilience, that if we die, so be it, but we're not moving backwards. And it's because of the things they've seen. They've survived 2 massive traumatic experiences, 2 pandemics. And if you think this is going to freak them out and, you know, push them back, whether it's COVID, whether it's a government, I mean, these people have seen everything under the sun. There are people at that protest who have lost family members during the Sikh genocide, who themselves were targeted and beaten. And they're just like, okay, if it happens again, it happens again. But if we don't do this, generations on, like, people will suffer. And it's that thought process. Like, my heart just breaks for them. It breaks. And that's the thought process within my grandmother too, that, you know, these laws need to be repealed, because if they don't, my progeny will suffer. And that's basically it. So to sum it all up, I know what I do is helping other people, but I do it for the people I love.
Okay. I mean, that was really eye-opening. And I have a next question as well, going back to the farmers' protests. I mean, we saw a lot of Punjabi stars coming out and speak, and you are very much part of that industry. Did it in any way impacted their, their contracts with directors or music record albums in some way? Because, I mean, as a journalist, I heard a couple of, like, you know, I don't know, because I couldn't verify them for sure. So were there any such things that happened between the Punjabi film industry and the Bollywood, where some stars were, like, you know, kept out from the work just because they spoke?
I have no idea. I honestly don't, because a lot of the Punjabi actors or singers that I speak to are predominantly in Punjab. I do think that the government has their own way of arm twisting, like they do raids and they do this, but I don't know. I honestly, I don't have an answer for that because nobody said anything to me, but then again, I haven't been working because I was supposed to get married and then COVID happened. So.
Okay. Yeah, I hope it ends soon. I think things are improving.
I hope so too.
Amra, you want to go next?
Yes, I will. And I want to first thank you, Monica, because your interventions are really strong and I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate that because I'm also from a Punjabi family. So I know, I hear your heart and I know what you're talking about. And it really gladdens me to see that, you're standing up for the farmers' protest that is happening, etc. My question to you is that does the fact that you have a very transnational life and you are perhaps a little bit removed from the country itself, does it in any way stop you from speaking up on what is happening in India? For example, does it bring a sort of inhibition or something? I know you said that, if you're not educated about certain thing, educate yourself about your audience, but I want to hear it from you.
I think living in America has given me a lot more freedom to speak up. I think one of the problems with the celebrities in India is they face, retaliation from the government. I don't have to face that because I'm not there, and I can just easily be like, all right, I'm never coming back. It's not like I have family there or loved ones there, So if anything, I think being in America and speaking about things in India has removed inhibitions. If I was living in India, I'd be worried about arrest or worried about, any type of backlash. Like the only type of backlash I can have here is someone leaving a comment under a social media post or someone, being like, okay, you're not going to get work in Hindi cinema. Great. Like, it's not like I'm starving, So I do think that living in America has helped me. It hasn't inhibited me in any way. And I do think that I was able to be as vocal as I am because I live abroad.
Just adding also from that, and I know that you have worked also with Diljit Dosanjh, and he lives partly in India, partly in America, perhaps, right? And he has also been very vocal. Do you see any sort of like differences between the celebrities who have half of their lives in India and then the rest half in another part of the world speaking up and you speaking up? How do you?
Yeah. Well, looking at Diljit, he really hasn't spoken up since January 26th. He hasn't said anything, done anything, visited the farmers' protest. So I think that in itself shows you that, yeah, he has a lot to lose.
And does it then in some ways come back to the point that we have been arguing all the while, that there is a repressive government perhaps which is hitting on the freedom of speech that you started?
Yeah. He was the income tax department. He had an income tax department raid. What's her name? Taapsee Pannu had an income tax raid. But I think whereas Taapsee has still been somewhat vocal, Diljit Dosanjh has completely stopped. I think one of his last tweets were when Nodeep Kaur was getting arrested. But other than that, I mean, Nodeep Kaur was going to a hearing. But other than that, he's kind of just backed away. Yeah, maybe the government has a play in it. Maybe, he values his career in Hindi cinema more. I don't know. But I am going to say I'm extremely, extremely disappointed because being such a huge Punjabi artist, and having so much love from the Punjabi audiences, not speaking on an issue that is so pertinent to Punjab's existence is sad.
Thanks a lot, Monica. I will hand it to Anu because Anu also had some questions. Anu?
Yeah. My question is, because I do notice that you meant and you said that it is the question of of my people, of my country. So, and I also know that you stay in United States, I suppose, right? So you also have another people that you are also living with, So how do you see this allegiance towards your country of origin and people, your community, as the way you said, and also towards Americans and America as a nation?
So I always talk about a third Punjab, right? And there's Pakistan Punjab, there's India Punjab, and then there's a third Punjab that, lays like lace all over the world. And we are connected because of our religion, our culture, and our language. And that's a belonging that no one can ever take away, right? Our history lies in Punjab. I am an American because I was born here. My future lies here. My entire family is here. My kids will grow up here. So the well-being of this nation is important to me because I would like to raise my kids in a beautiful country. You can't separate the two from who I am, right? I am a Punjabi girl born and raised in America. That is my heritage. And I've worked very hard to take the best of both worlds, right? Whereas I guess my liberal mindset may come from my American heritage, but my rootedness and that kind of raw emotion comes from my Punjabiness. And you can love both, you can exist in both, and you can be a multifaceted human being. And I think this kind of thinking that a human only has one face is flawed, right? Even the Chinese say, like, we have like 6 faces. We have one to ourselves, one to our family, one to the public, one to work. Like, each human has a lot to them. And I think people who have multidimensional identities are just more interesting. And now it's becoming more and more common in America, like, especially, when you have Spanish Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Chinese Americans. Like, it's no one in America came from America. America is a country of immigrants. Unless you're Native American, you're not American. And I think that's what people don't understand. Everybody who lives in America has emigrated here or migrated here from somewhere else.
Yeah, I will just add one more question to it. So when celebrities like you take a stand, that there's something big is at stake, and often it could also lead to some controversy, whether you like it or not, whether you have a control over it or not. So that's one aspect. But we also know that, especially in India, before the release of certain movies, we have such controversies, and often they're used to get some traction, So how do you see these two aspects of controversies leading to celebrities taking certain positions?
I believe having a controversy for the sake of having a controversy is cheap. That thinking and mentality is cheap. I think if I am stuck in a controversy due to something that benefits society, that's something else, right? That's not controversy, because controversy, the term itself, denotes a negativity, right? And if you're trying to do something good for people, it can't be a controversy. I think I've been fortunate enough to have support for everything I've done. I've never just come out and said anything. I've done my research and I've spoken on topics that I think pertain to the well-being of my community, no matter what it is. And if some of those topics have been controversial, so be it. But here's the thing. Well-behaved women rarely make history. So if I turn into a pigeon and come and shit on the chessboard a little bit, so be it. But you need to shake things up if you want to change something.
Okay, thanks. I will take on that, because I think then there is also a distinction between women celebrities taking certain stands and the risk associated with it, and the men counterpart taking it. And then again, in the context of Bollywood, in the context of Hollywood or other film industries, how would you look at it?
I don't see a difference between a man or a woman taking a stand on anything. Do I think women are more vulnerable because society is generically patriarchal and believes women shouldn't have a voice? Yes. I do believe people are threatened by a woman with a voice. I believe people have a mindset, especially Indian people and Punjabi people have this mindset that women should be coy and demure and, shy and always happy and smiling and, not cussing people out. But, well, sucks for them. Pretty much, I believe that a man speaking on certain issues and a woman speaking on certain issues is exactly the same. Both people's words should carry the same weight. In our society, do they? In certain facets, no. In certain facets, yes. We still have a lot of work to do within that area to change that, but it is what it is. But yeah, men and women are equal.
So I have a difficult question for you, Monica. Sorry about that. But you and I both are Punjabi, right? When like you and myself, we go out and speak, there is a big banner that comes and tells us on our face that, hey, you Khalistani. Heard about that word?
Yeah, I've heard it.
You were born after that movement, and I'm also born after that movement, Khalistan movement happened. But then how do you respond to that labeling that at least parts of the governments do try to put on the movement, on the social movement, even the farmers movement now? There was a big labeling of it as a Khalistan-driven movement. So how do you respond?
I'm very glad you asked this question. Very glad. Now, I was born in '89, so I was born in technically the middle of the Khalistan movement and the middle of the Sikh genocide, right? The Sikh genocide didn't start in '84. It started in the early '80s, late '70s, and transcended into the mid '90s. And Sangat Singh, who was also a raw agent, put the number at like 1.2 million killed. And it's very important to note that the Khalistan movement started after the bombing of the Golden Temple. The Akal Takht declared Khalistan, I think, in '86. Before that, the Anandpur resolution and everything that came before that was about farming the Punjabi language and the Sikh identity as separate from Hinduism. It was a very kind of, please give us our rights kind of, it was a letter asking the government to give us our rights. It was asking the governments to keep Punjabi speaking areas together. It was asking, please don't divert Punjab's waters. It was saying, please don't mesh Sikhism into Hinduism. We are different. Please don't try to abolish our language. If you read the Anandpur resolution, some C-grade actress, Gangana, is saying like, oh, it was a declaration of independence. No, it wasn't. The Khalistan movement started after '84, after seeing the atrocities committed against the Sikhs. And anyone would say, who is a Sikh would say, look at what's happening to my people. This country is doing this to us. We need our own nation. Anybody would say that. Now, moving forward into what's happening now, the Khalistan movement subsided after the '90s. It went underground, or it went quiet, or it just kind of, everybody went on with life. People were dealing with their traumas. But what the government did was they infiltrated it. The government infiltrated the Khalistan movement. The present day Khalistan movement that you see is the Indian government. They pull it up and make it vocal whenever it needs to be. If we're doing something at the United Nations, they send it there. If something is, if Sikhs are doing something to help with COVID, they send it there. If something's happening in the State Department, they send it there. They kind of use it, they turn it into a pigeon send it in wherever something productive is happening for the Sikh community, get it to shit all over the chessboard and mess up the pieces and walk out. That's how they use the Khalistan movement in, you know, the current major Khalistan organizations. Are there people that still want Khalistan? Yeah. Is there something wrong with that? No. Wanting something is not a crime. Being vocal about something is not a crime. They're not doing, like, people who are saying like, yes, you know, a nation for Sikhs would be a great idea. There is nothing wrong with voicing it. Do I agree with it? No. But do I think that somebody else has the right to think that? Yes. And do I think there's something wrong with it? No. I have my reasons, they have their reasons. And you know what? I respect your opinion. But the government coming in and labeling and calling it like, you know, oh, these are terrorists. No, dude. Like, the foreign governments also know that it's the Indian government that is projecting this forward. So I don't know, honey, like you're in a loss yourself, because nobody's buying it. Like, literally nobody's buying it anymore. Like, this, it worked in the 90s. It's not working anymore. It's literally not working anymore. And it's almost like they've turned they've turned themselves into a laughing stock. It's like they called they said something during the CAA protest too, which like literally everybody laughed at. I forgot the terminology that they used, but they tried to label CAA as like having some sort of terrorist connect as well, and it didn't work. So that's my response to that.
Thanks a lot, Monica, for that. Such a strong response. And I do acknowledge that all these times, the demands of the protesters through CAA and through the farmers' protest has been directed to the government of India, not to a third government, not to an outsider, not to a government they might have created for themselves in their dreams, in their hopes or their ambitions. It is government of India that they have been thinking. Like you said, the same thing with the Anandpur resolution. They've been asking them that, please listen to us. We are your people. This is our country. Please help us forward. Rakib, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is such an interesting topic, because whenever you bring Punjab 1984, it takes me back to 1987 in Kashmir too. And this labeling, I mean, as a Kashmiri before 2014, I mean, we were always labeled as terrorists. Like, you know, whenever you see a Kashmiri, I was even kicked out of hotels sometimes. Like one time I went to Mumbai, and I checked into the hotel. First of all, he would not give it to me. Then he saw my press credentials, and then he gave in. And then the other manager who came in and who checked my address, he said, "How did they let you in?" He didn't know I was for the press. Then they kicked me out of the hotel, and it has happened in Delhi too. So, I mean, this is just because a narrative is started somewhere. Like, you know, these are the people who are a problem to your country. And this labeling goes on, and it goes on to a point where these people who are being labeled or marginalized, systematically marginalized and put to the edges. And of course, there are responses from people like, for example, a person like me. If that thing happens to me, what I go and do is write. Like, you know, that is my outlet. But some people don't have that privilege to write. Okay, so they take different forms of, like, you know, resistance. And coming to, like, you know, again, the labeling part. I mean, don't you think rather than just putting these labels on the people, they should start truth and reconciliation and ensuring justice to the people like who have been wronged?
Okay, so I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to give you an example between Trump and Biden and how both of them handled George Floyd's death. For a government to reconcile with its people is very easy, but to rile them up is also very easy. So Trump has a very white supremacist mentality. We can liken him to RSS in Hindutva if you want to. Basically, when the protests were happening after George Floyd's death, everything he would say would anger the crowd even more, right? Because they were already, their sentiments were already hurt. Same way goes for people who are pro-Khalistan. Some of these people have lost loved ones. They have seen their aunts or other family members raped by the police. So it's hurt sentiment. It comes from pain. It comes from, this has happened to my people. This has happened to my family. Sorry, my doorbell just rang, so I completely lost my thought process. However, when Biden came up and he kind of brought them in, right? He brought them in with love and saying, I understand your pain. I understand what's going on. I understand where this is stemming from. We need justice. We need this. We need that. It didn't heal the trauma, but it acted like some sort of a mallam, some sort of an ointment to just kind of calm people down. It didn't heal anything. It didn't change anything, but it calmed people down. So instead of perpetuating a Khalistan narrative or a Kashmiri terrorist narrative, if the government came out and said, you are one of us, you are dissenting, we accept it, it would have just diffused the situations. It wouldn't have fixed anything. It wouldn't have even done anything, impactful, besides being like, okay, you come in peace. All right, we also come in peace. Like, that's literally what happens. Now, perpetuating narratives, like when you dehumanize someone, you do it because you think they are less than. It's an ideology. Why, under Trump, did the American government dehumanize African Americans? Why, under Modi's regime, are they dehumanizing Sikhs and Muslims? Because they believe that these people are less than. That is the ideology that they have. That is the ideology they are perpetuating. So when you have this narrative that they're throwing out, it's to brainwash everyone else. You can't like these people because this is what they're going to do to you. This is why they are a threat. It's basically to kind of get the masses on their side and to just swing the masses. Under Trump, you saw this wave of racism and hate crimes and white supremacist movements and now attacks against Asian kind of surmount. It was always there. Just like in India, like this kind of Hindu supremacy ideology was always there. These people just kind of allowed it to come out. They allowed it to come out. Something that was doormat for so long, they have allowed it to come out. That's not saying that there haven't been atrocities, but I think what we see now is much more loud and in your face and like, hey, you are not equal to us. You see it so much more obviously, and people are so carefree to say it and to do it and to discriminate. It's horrendous. And it's because the ideologies of the leaders in power.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you, Monica, said over there, that it is clearly also, distinguishing between Trump and Biden administration, that it's not just about what the governments and what the people are doing, but also how the governments are handling it. And we do see parallels in most of the populous countries where the governments have handled it in a rather cruel fashion, not without empathy. Forget about having empathy, it's rather cruel. So it's more of like an oppressive behavior that we do see often. Rakib, sorry, I intervened.
Yeah, I mean, in India too, like empathy is such a big and huge word. From our prime minister, we cannot even expect sympathy. Like, at least say a word out. Okay, I feel for you guys. For 2002, he till now, like, 19 years, he hasn't said a word. Like, hey, people, you were wrong, and I'm sorry about it. I feel your pain, And what happened during the Delhi riots over the past 7 years, the amount of lynchings that happened in the country, this man didn't say anything, the prime minister of the country. So I don't see that there is going to be truth and reconciliation and that dispensation of justice under this government, under this regime, as long as it is in power.
I don't think we should ever expect any type of reconciliation from the Indian government. I mean, from any government, right? The Sikhs have been trying for so long to get justice for the Sikh genocide, for the perpetrators of the Sikh genocide, and it hasn't happened. And that'll always be an open wound in all of our hearts, right? And that's because we say, like, yes, the Modi regime is RSS in Hindutva, yes, but the regimes before it also had a very strong RSS hold. Even when it came to Congress, which believe in a secular India, it wasn't like the ideology wasn't that Hindu, Sikhs, Muslims are equal. It was like, yes, we're going to be in a secular India, and Hindus and Sikhs can live here, but it is a Hindu nation, and you guys need to keep your religion private. Just don't bring it out into do what you got to do, but like don't stick it in people's faces. Also, during the Sikh genocide, John Dayal, who I want to say is a prominent Christian speaker, an eyewitness to the Sikh riots in Delhi immediately following Indira Gandhi's murder, said that if there were 10 goons from Congress, there were also joining them 10 RSS Hindutva people. It wasn't like, when we say that, yes, Congress did the Sikh genocide or created the Sikh genocide. No, it was not just Congress. It was also an induced RSS ideology. So you can't separate the Indian government from RSS. Modi being thrown out of power is not going to mean that all of India's problems are solved. That's not how it works. It's going to be this long process. And same goes for America. Just because Trump's out of power doesn't mean the American government is all of a sudden fine. It's a long process of like the laws that are on the book. Inside the Indian Constitution, it says Sikhs are Hindus. Sikhs don't have their own designation. Like I said, it's going to be a long process of just cleaning it out and reformulating. The same goes for America. There's laws on the books that unequally marginalize African American people and minorities. And that's a long process of cleaning out the books, right? Why is, like, I posted something the other day where, one guy voted for his dead mother, and he got like probation, whereas a African American lady who did not know that she could not vote, voted and got 5 years in prison. Like things like that. Like, sorry, my vocab is breaking up. Like there are things so embedded in the system that without even knowing, they marginalize minority communities, both in India and America. And the reason why I keep bringing America into this is because I don't want this to sound like that I'm just like we're bashing India. That's not what we're doing. The purpose here is that if you don't highlight the problems, you can't push a nation to be better. If I don't highlight the issues that I see in America, I can never push it to be better. So that's the reason why I keep drawing these parallels.
Yeah, that's actually a very good thing that you said. And in fact, it was what my next question was to both of you, actually, because both of you are also as international as any of us over here. And that was that, how do you see, or what is the future of the transnational diaspora community, especially the young diaspora community, which, like Monica, yourself, Rakib, yourself, and everyone over here has been very vocal about the human rights abuses, not just in their home countries, but also in their adopted countries. So over to you both, that how do you see this going forward, and what is your hopes for the future?
I'll let Rakib go first.
I'll let you go because I'm just new to this country. I just moved in recently, so I don't think so I'm the right person to talk about that identity yet. Let me live in here for a couple of more years. I'll come back and talk about it. But yes, Monica, you can go ahead and then I'll add something to it for sure.
I think it's all about educating yourself, right? I think the biggest downfall would be if we let go of our history. So I'm talking from a Sikh Punjabi perspective in India, or a Sikh Punjabi perspective in America. And my perspective is just that, like, it would be a disservice to us and who we are if we stop educating ourselves and our children on our future. I mean, sorry, on our heritage, on our history, on what has gone down within our community. And I think that's most importantly. When we talk about human rights violations, we need to talk about them and be vocal and teach our kids to be vocal. But we have to understand that in any situations where human rights are being violated, look for the people who are helping, and unite with them. And I think that was one of my, like, how I united with Rakib. Rakib and I belong to two different communities, but we're fighting for the same thing, right? We're fighting for not just my community or his community. We're fighting for all of India. Like, we're saying, hey guys, wake up, because you guys are treading down the wrong path. It's for everyone. It's not just for my community or his community. So unite with people despite differences. And I think that's something that all of our communities lack. We tend to kind of stay in our own little hub and not associate with others. Stop doing that. Step out of your comfort zone, talk to people, network with people, and build your team. Find people who are fighting for the same things as you. Two heads are better than one, and three, like, you hit a gold mine. That's basically all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree. Anuban, do you want to go ahead, or?
Rakib, I wanted to have your opinion on national.
No, continue. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to still keep you there on the hot seat.
Yeah, I do strongly agree to what Monica said. Since the start, since this whole conversation started, yeah. So I believe that the diaspora, Indian diaspora, especially the Kashmir diaspora abroad, has more responsibility on its shoulder since this government came to power in India, because the onus is on us right now to educate and aware people about what's happening back in the country. To educate and aware our community, our surroundings, wherever we go, because people usually don't know what's going on in the country. For example, if you talk to them about India, all they will say is, oh, a good country, yoga, meditation, karak chai and all. But beyond and beneath that yoga, meditation, spirituality, what happens is a whole different reality. What has been happening in Kashmir, what has been happening in the northeastern parts of the country, what has been happening with tribals, what has been happening with Dalits, what has been happening with Christians before BJP came to power, and after BJP came to power. It's a whole eruption. So, the onus is on us to to educate our communities, and because within our community as well, a lot of people don't know what's happening because they have actually dissociated themselves from the country where they came from. There are a lot of people, I have met them. I was here in 2019. I traveled for literally 4 months across the US, giving lectures and all. And I would see folks from the Indian community, from the South Asian diaspora. They didn't even know where the Kashmir was. They didn't even know the history of the region. They didn't know what was happening there. They didn't know what was CA. So there was a lot of education involved. And as the members of diaspora as educated and aware, active members of diaspora, I think more responsibilities on us and others, who know what's going on, and pass it on to the others as well. So that's how I would respond to it. Very brief one point.
Yeah, if I may come back. I will go back to what you were saying. You talked about the Sikh, the violence against the Sikh in 1984, and the fact that there was no recognition by the government, official recognition. No repent, justice wasn't delivered. And we also see, on the other hand, similar situation about Gujarat riots, and what happens in Kashmir. But on the other hand, we had some very sensible movies, like Machis was one movie, which was by Gulzar, and it depicted how the violence was perpetrated, during the Khalistan movement against Sikhs. We have Firak, which talks about the 2002 riots, in Gujarat. So, and even for Kashmir, perhaps we have other examples that we can give. So, how do you see role of movies where governments are not doing their job? Movies by sensibly showcasing what really happened, and what was the context. Are they, in a way, from society, a gesture is coming in that way? Do you see it? Do you see it this way?
Did you say marches highlighted the Khalistan movement?
No, it was the violence which was against the Sikh young people, right, who had participated in.
Okay, so I don't recall that. Maybe I'm confusing it with another movie, but I do have to say that yes, although like there was a movie called Punjab 1984, which Diljit was in, it was recently removed from Netflix. I think movies are good ways of sending out messages and propelling a narrative. Yes. Do I think movies do justice? No. Like I'm working on a documentary right now, and like it's good to educate people, but people who have been in there and been in the situation, for instance, people who have lost loved ones during the Sikh genocide, it's not going to heal their pain. The moments to heal pain and to bring a community towards you were the immediate aftermath and putting people behind bars. Sumedh Saini is out on bail. Why? What message does that send to the Sikh community, right? So yeah, you can make whatever movie you want, but that versus seeing someone like KPS Gill, like the government coming out and saying, yes, KPS Gill was a butcher. He was a sadistic butcher. Sumedh Saini was a butcher. They deserve to be in jail. We're going to keep them locked up in jail. That is what's going to cause healing. Movies, yes, like, my grandmother will watch a movie. She'll be like, Inane sadi, sadi kahaniyan dasiyan, great. She'll be happy for it. But then again, she'll think back to, this one of our relatives were killed, and then this happened, and my son, these friends were killed. Like it'll go back to that, and it'll stay like that until someone's like, you know what, grandma, the people that did that, they're behind bars and they're never coming out. Justice has been served. That's what creates healing. So great, movies are great. You're going to make them, more power to you, but it's not going to really do anything. Like it's the same thing as a government coming out and saying like, we hear you, we see you, you have the right to dissent. It doesn't really do anything besides calm people down, but the pain is still there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Something?
Yes, at least I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
and I share the feeling that
this last word, I take your point that movies cannot do the job of justice, and that's separate. And I think that's understood. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, and now keeping in mind the time that we asked Monica to be here with us for an hour for a conversation, I really want to thank her for accepting so graciously and for being such a strong voice of diaspora Punjabis outside and being so fierce in her communication today and so candid in your communication today. Very glad to have met you so far. So, and with this note, I would like to thank you as well, Rakib, for moderating this conversation and starting it in the direction that it went. And thanks to Anu and the other two members of the team who have been quietly helping with the live streaming and everything else. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining us today, and also to the audience. If we have any, thank you for joining us for today. And we start again tomorrow, the EU-India Summit. It will be our 5th day of the EU-India Summit, and we have again almost 6 panels lined up for you starting tomorrow morning at 9:30. So see you all. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye. Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.
Right.
Bye.